Hi, I'm Alyssa Colman, author of Where Only Storms Grow, The Gilded Girl, and The Tarnished Garden, and today I want to read to you the first chapter of Where Only Storms Grow. But first, let's talk a little bit about the time period when this historical novel is set, the Dust Bowl. So you're probably thinking, how could anything called the Dust Bowl be exciting? But hear me out. This was a period between 1931 and 1939 when the rains stopped. Think about that. Almost 10 years without a single drop of rain. It happened across the middle of the country, but for the most part, it affected these states you can see here: Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, the top called the panhandle of Texas, the panhandle of Oklahoma. So the worst of it was right in here, which is, of course, where I chose to set my story. But during this time period, farmers struggled to grow crops without rain. The Great Depression was happening, so the whole country was struggling, and the land dried up. Fields looked like this, utter devastation. Those used to be wheat stalks there. So much of this happened because the native buffalo grass got plowed up by the farmers, which I get into the book, but just suffice it to know, the topsoil up and blew away in storms of epic proportion. Look at this. This is a real storm from April 18th, 1935 coming into a town. When I see these clouds like this, I don't think storm, I think mountains. What about you? Yeah, and these storms didn't just move forward, they rolled like the end of the world, headed right towards you. And once they hit, they were so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The wind moved at 65 miles an hour, and some of them were thousands of miles long. This storm in particular blew 300,000 tons of soil. That is twice the amount excavated from the Panama Canal, a project that took 7 years to dig out. This storm lasted a single afternoon. Well, many people left, but the people who stayed wore goggles and masks to cover their face. Here's 3 kids headed to school. Would you wear this? Imagine for a minute, it's April 14th, 1935, a day that would come to be known as Black Sunday, the worst storm in a decade of dust storms. But you don't know that yet. Instead, all you know is it is a beautiful day, and you and your family have gone out for a picnic. You've turned your father's beloved horse, Pie, out into the pasture along with the rest of the animals to enjoy this beautiful day. But now you look up and the worst dust storm you have ever seen is on the horizon. Daddy will be furious if you don't get his horse to the barn. So you and your brother take off running. And so begins Where Only Storms Grow. The end of the world. If Howe and I didn't find Daddy's horse soon, we'd all die in this dust storm. The wind scoured my face and whipped my hair into furious question marks. Which way was the barn? Were we still headed deeper into the field, or had we gotten turned around? My eyes were too crusted with dirt to tell. I stumbled and almost lost my grip on Howe's suspenders. My twin brother and the rope looped around my waist were my only tethers to the barn and to safety. Pie, where are you? Between the gale and the cloth mask stretched over my nose and mouth, I barely even heard myself. If I was a horse lost in the storm, where would I be? The debris stung my legs like the worst sunburn. Animals suffocated in these blizzard-like dust storms. So did people. Howe paused, and I selfishly ducked my face behind his shoulder, letting his body block the grit for a moment. He angled his mask an inch away from my ear. Even still, he had to shout to be heard, "Joanna, we have to turn around." I grabbed his arm and pulled his ear to my mask. Not without Pie. I squinted to see his reaction. I could barely make out his hazel eyes, but the tension in his shoulders told me he was about to protest. Then he nodded. We had to give Daddy a reason to come home. In the distance, there came a frightened whinny. My head snapped up and I got a face full of grit. Howe trudged toward the sound, and I grabbed his suspenders again. The rough rope we'd run through his belt loop and tied around my waist went tight as I followed him through the darkness. Without warning, something smacked into my knees. The thorny branches of a tumbleweed caught on the hem of my skirt and scraped at my skin, drawing blood. I kicked at it with my other leg to free myself, and my ankle plunged into the dry branches. I lost my grip on Howe as I fell. I landed on the hard ground and scrambled around trying to free my leg from its cage. There was a tug at my waist as the rope came loose. I cried out, spat dirt. Where was my mask? I opened my eyes to see the cotton square flapping in front of my face, held on by one lucky ear. I pulled it back on, but I was far from safe. Careful as I could, I extracted my ankle from the tumbleweed's clutches. It rolled away into the blackness. My spine was stinging, and it was a struggle to push myself up to my knees. How? I screamed, but the words flew away. I stretched out my arms, straining with every sense I had to find my brother or the rope that could lead me back to safety. I couldn't see, hear, or feel anything except howling blackness. I was alone in the storm. Will Joanna and Howe find each other? Will they ever save Pie, their daddy's horse? To find out, you'll have to read the book. Once again, I'm Alyssa Colman. Thank you so much for reading with me today.